Hi everyone, my name is Hallie and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a long time since some of you guys that are subscribed to me or have watched my content before are probably like, where has she been? And why now is she uploading a video after all these months of being absent? And I actually have a couple of good explanations as to where I've been. So completely unrelated to this video, I at first had gotten laid off at the beginning half of last year from my work from home job. And that was my first job coming out of my post grad of my bachelor's degree. And I had been there for 3 years and I was having this identity crisis of trying to figure out, okay, now that I no longer work here, what am I wanting to do career-wise? So I was so focused on that and reconnecting with family and, out of that working environment that was a little harsh for me. I was just trying to rediscover myself. So I kind of had this channel on a back burner. And then at the late half of February, I actually then got my job that I'm working now currently. However, that was more in office. So a lot of the usual content that I would have when I was working from home that I could just film whenever I wasn't working and other things like that, it was going to be impossible to do because I was going to be working 9 to 5 at a job that to get there and back to my husband and I's apartment was about almost 2 hours due to traffic. So I was just like, I still wanted to get back into vlogging and coming back to this channel, but it just seemed like I was having a lot of things that were starting to become more of a priority at the time. Then we got to mid-March, and that is coming to what I am here to talk to you guys about today, which is the fact that I am pregnant. Anybody who has followed me on social media anywhere else besides this channel already knows about this. This is our 20-week anatomy scan that I had 3 weeks ago. I am now 23 weeks by the time you're seeing this. And so, yeah, my husband and I are expecting our first baby girl. So she is a girl, yes. So that's a very cute ultrasound until you get to the fact that it's getting very oogie boogie right there with her skeletal face that you can see in the ultrasound. But yeah, I first wanted to talk about kind of how I found out that I was pregnant, and then also my first trimester and how that all ended up being, and what my second trimester has been like so far, especially since we are getting finally closer to my viability week, which I feel like viability week is like towards the end of your 23rd week into your 24th week. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a first-time mom. I don't know what I'm doing or what to expect, but I've been kind of just playing everything by ear and trying to do the best research and everything that I possibly can. So yeah, I'm just navigating this journey and you guys are just, along for the ride. So if you guys have been pregnant, are pregnant now, or are looking to, start this journey for yourself very soon, hopefully this can be very entertaining and somewhat informative as someone who basically has never had children and this is my first go around. So how I found out I was pregnant. So in February, I was just going by the motions. As some of you guys know about the lore of my family, it's my husband's birthday on the 9th, my birthday on the 12th, Valentine's Day. We just got a lot of things going on in February. And then obviously, as I told you guys earlier, I did start my new job. So into the end of February to the early part of March, I was just trying to get into the groove and trying to, learn all the things that I needed to do about my job and my onboarding process and training, and just trying to figure out how I was going to fit into this new office situation, because again, I only was in a work from home environment coming out of my post grad. So I was just trying to figure out how I was going to work in an office and trying to adjust to that. And so I wasn't really focused on tracking my time of the month. I wasn't focused on all of that. Now, my husband and I had been trying. We started trying in October, and I was on Trimester, the birth control pill, for about a good 3 years. And we finally got off of it, and we were talking about like the possibility of me having children, and obviously me being pregnant and us having children and having this journey. And we knew that there was going to be some ups and downs. So I wasn't expecting to get pregnant right away because, again, I had been on birth control, and usually it takes 6 months to a year to kind of figure out like your cycle to get back on track and all those things. So I was expecting that. Also, I have mild PCOS and I have Hashimoto's hyperthyroidism, which that all leads to some fertility issues. Doesn't mean that you're infertile, but obviously I was expecting that, as well as through my genetics thing. My mother as well was having infertility issues when she was trying to conceive my sister and I. So just with all of those things and knowing that knowledge, I knew that it was going to be a very long journey, but I wasn't expecting for it to be this fast. So I started in October of last year, and then what happened, I guess. So I was pretty occupied all February. And so the beginning of March starts to roll around, and I'm starting to get some like queasiness and some sort of like gastrointestinal discomfort. And I've never had the stomach flu, not even as a kid. I've never had gastrointestinal issues like IBS or anything like that. So it was a feeling that I'd never felt before. And I for some reason, I equated it to, it might be the fact that I'm taking longer commutes. And so maybe my stomach isn't, digesting things appropriately, because I would eat my breakfast in the car to get to work at that point. And maybe it was because I was sitting down, so I might be not processing my breakfast and my lunch and snacks and stuff like that. And I just normally would be very active, even working from home. I would stand up for a little bit and I would just be more active. But now I was kind of like sitting down in a desk more often. And so I was thinking the commute and all this other stuff, it might be that, right? And so even when I did have some sort of like stomach issues in the past, when I did, which was rare, I would just be like, okay, I'm just going to take some Tums and some antacid. And then in like 3 or so days, like it'll start to go away. But as the first 2 weeks of March was progressing, it was getting worse, to the point where I couldn't eat anything without feeling so queasy and nauseous. And it was getting to the point where it was coming and going at first. And then as the days started to progress into weeks, I literally started to feel like I was going to vomit, like I was going to throw up every single day, but I just never did. And it got to the point where we finally got to maybe like the 13th or the 14th of March of this year. And I basically had to tell my job that I could not go into work, because I literally woke up that day. It was a Monday. I remember it so specifically. But I was like, I cannot come in for work because I am so nauseous. And I told my husband, I was like, if I don't get better, because it was like at this point, it was becoming unbearable. I was like, if I don't get better by the time you get home, because he had to go to work anyway, I was like, we're going to have to go to the hospital. My husband's like, it's okay, it'll be fine. Like, he's trying not to make me panic, because again, I've never felt this level of stuff that has gotten worse. So I thought that there was something wrong with me health-wise. I didn't even think that pregnancy was a thing in my head, because again, I was not very occupied, right, on focusing on that. And I did know that my time of the month was late by like 2 or 3 weeks. But, since I had been off of my birth control, I thought that, it was, because things were spotty, because I was still trying to gain, a sense of when my time of the month would start. So I just thought that it might be another thing of like, I'm coming off the birth control and it might be something like that. I was just trying to basically come up with everything besides what it was basically at this point. And so finally the end of the day arrives. I'm officially now done working from home for that day because my job does have work from home options if we're not feeling well, which is good. But my husband, he's driving home from work and he calls me and he's like, "Are you feeling any better?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm actually feeling worse than I did when you left this morning." So I'm just like, at this point, I need to go to the emergency room. My husband's like, "Okay, let's try to let's beat out all the odds. Maybe you need to take a pregnancy test." And in my head, I was like, I did not think about that. For some reason, even though we were actively trying and everything, in my head, right? Because every single month since we began to try, before even when my period was even a day late, I would take it, and obviously it was negative. And, I didn't want to give my hopes up because I started to feel down on myself, even though we had only been trying for like 3 or 4 months at that point. And I just didn't want to get my hopes up on something that might not be happening. So I was just like, nah, like, okay, like I'll try to take it, because at this point, now I'm kind of hoping that I am pregnant, because if I'm not, I believe that I am going to pass away. Like it's been real. 26 years of life, it's been a good run, right? So my husband orders a test. We get it delivered to our apartment, and he's in the bathroom with me. I take the test and I'm sitting there. These tests are a test because I'm late for about like 2 or so weeks. It's one of those tests that it takes at least a minute. So it's like one of those tests that it's just like a standard test. It's not one of those early response ones where it's like you can find 6 days sooner. Like, we're past that at this point. We just need to know, right, from a regular test that's not early response. So usually it'll take at least a minute. The first line comes up. I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And my husband's like, no, the first line always comes up. I was like, no, that is like the first line to show that you are actually pregnant first, before the original like lines, right? So I'll show what it kind of looks like. So that first line shows up. And as it's progressing, I'm like, literally, watch. This is going to be red. Like, we're literally seeing it in time. Like, it's not even waiting to give a response. Then the second line comes up. Bold red, both of them. And my husband and I are kind of like, oh my God. Like, we had to literally just sit there. We sat there in silence for about a good, 2 minutes. And we always had this feeling of what we would have like a reaction when we did find out that we were pregnant later down the line, however that would be in our journey. But we weren't, like, when it finally got there, we didn't even know what to say. But it was so exciting. But I feel like the hardest part was, I was like, oh my gosh, like eventually I'm gonna have to tell my parents, and I'm gonna have to tell my in-laws, and I'm gonna have to tell my friends. But at the time, I just was so like in shock, in awe of the situation, because I had never had like a positive test. I was always, when they would be negative, I'm like, okay, is it? And I would try different angles to make it seem like I was, but it was not, it was not. But this time it was so hard to ignore how harsh those lines truly were. But yeah, since I took that test, I was nauseous in the first trimester, but it was never like that day. I don't know if baby girl was like, you are going to finally see me. You will not be in denial. You will know I'm here. And then she was like, okay, cool. Like something in the atmosphere was like putting that energy out there. I don't know, but it was never that bad. Even as my first trimester progressed, as far as my nausea was concerned, it was not that bad in comparison to the day that I had found out. It was so odd. But yeah, since I found out in the first trimester, it came in waves. So it would come in the morning when I woke up. It would come in the afternoon when it was time for lunch. And then when I laid my head down at night, it would, start the third wave. And that would happen every day around the same time in my entire first trimester. So the first 3 months that I knew of my pregnancy, that was happening. And it would literally depend on the day or even the week. So there were some days or some weeks where it would just be kind of like annoying, right? It was just kind of like the nausea was there, but it was still bearable to where I could do my everyday activities throughout the week. And then other times it was like unbearable when those waves would hit because it felt like I was going to vomit. But I had never vomited my entire first trimester, which I feel like I kind of lucked out on that because I know that a lot of women in their first trimester do throw up because of their nausea and because of the morning sickness, which we need to stop calling it morning sickness because I don't remember something that's considered morning sickness happening out throughout the entire day. But yeah, it was still pretty bad for me, just in general, even though I never vomited, because I am just a person who hates the feeling of throwing up. I hate nausea. I hate the feeling of almost throwing up. And that was like the biggest thing for me in my first trimester was I was almost there, but I never got there, no matter how bad I was feeling that day, which was really weird. I don't know. Now we're getting into the food aversions. Now, this is where it really started to hurt my heart deep inside, because even though I am a huge ramen and pho fan and just soup in general, I grew up in a very big like soup family where we'd have crock pots and all that type. And, you know, with my husband now, I've been eating a lot of hot pot and all that different stuff. Anything that had to do with soup and noodles, it just was not happening. Just wasn't happening. There'd be times that my husband would make instant ramen and I literally had to like leave the room. We had to close all the doors. We had to, you know, open up all the windows because I would be sick for hours. There was even a time where even the visual representation of someone eating ramen made me want to vomit. Like literally I saw one woman that was talking about how like for her pregnancy, all she could eat was instant ramen. And I was watching her eat the ramen. And literally that, just watching this woman eat the ramen made me nauseous for over 4 hours. It was insane. Also another thing, I love coffee. I am such a coffee stan. I am such a matcha stan. Coffee and matcha, it was awful, especially at the office because my desk was only a very small few like steps away from the Keurig. So every time somebody was brewing coffee, I wanted to just pass away. It was just awful. And I would be nauseous for hours. Even after the smell of the brewed coffee goes away, I couldn't do it. I would even have to wait over the weekends where my husband and my sister would go to Phil's Coffee and they would go and get coffee. I would have to wait in the car because even the smell of the coffee in the coffee shop, just the aroma just made me sick to my stomach. And as someone who before pregnancy had like 2 cups a day, especially of iced coffee too, but I also used to like just brewed coffee black with like a little bit of sugar and cream. I couldn't do it. Really couldn't do it. Couldn't stand it. Garlic, love garlic, couldn't do it. Butter, like especially if it was being put in a pan, couldn't do it. Honestly, the only things that I could truly eat that made sense to me was mandarin oranges or cuties, goldfish. I got to a point where I could eat like mixed nuts. So I could have like salted peanuts, salted almonds, salted pistachios. Like I could eat those. But just overall, I was just eating like a little bird. Eating like a little bird. I couldn't do it. Cheez-Its, I could eat it. I couldn't even eat saltine crackers because a lot of people were giving me that advice that maybe I needed to eat some crackers. No. Like if it wasn't like some type of artificial cheese snack or something like that, Cheeto Puffs, if it wasn't something like that, I was not eating it. I was not eating it because I couldn't do it. Then like the only few meals that I really truly wanted in my first trimester was burgers, which I'm not a huge burger stan, but Shake Shack became my biggest fan. I was the biggest fan of Shake Shack. And then also just pepperoni pizza. There was even a time where I wanted like the loaded Texas cheese fries from Chili's, which I hadn't craved or wanted since like '08, since I was like 8 years old. All of these main meals that I'm talking about were all the things that I started to crave into my like towards like the end of my first trimester. So at this point I'm eating like I was a kid, like I was like a 7 to 8 year old little boy. I wanted nachos, I wanted bloomin' onions, I wanted chicken tenders, chicken nuggets. I just wanted stuff that before I was pregnant I did not like truly crave as much as I did when I was little. And it was just so random. So that was kind of like how my first trimester went, as far as like symptoms and stuff that I would have. I would also kind of get like headaches, and I'm like a migraine girly, but since then it wasn't like super intense, like migraines like I would usually have, which I would be debilitated for the whole day pre-pregnancy. But this time it was just kind of like headaches that would come and go, and I'm like, please, I'm already fighting for my life, especially during the nausea thing. So I was like, we got to pick one. We got to pick a struggle. Now we're going to talk about some second trimester things that I've started to develop. So still on food, cereal. Cereal is so good to me, especially Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which again, I have not really craved Cinnamon Toast Crunch or like those sugary cereals since I was a kid. But it's something about cereal when you're pregnant that literally feels like a lemonade on like a super hot, humid day. Like that's how the only way that I can explain it, at least from my perspective. It literally is so refreshing. My husband would come in to the kitchen and it'll be 3 a.m. and I'm literally sitting there over a bowl of cereal, like a big bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of like what I've been adding into the things that I have been craving. I love Otter Pops. Otter Pops are so good. Those ones that you used to have as a kid that would have like blue raspberry, apple, grape, orange, cherry. Love the cherry one. But I love all of those. We get like a pack of like 80 of them from the grocery store. I pop them all in the freezer and I could just throw those back. Like so good. But now I'm starting to move out of more savory stuff, even though I still can eat some of like the savory things that I talked about before. But now I'm really starting to get into some sweet things. I love Coca-Cola. I'm a Sprite girly. But for some reason, like Coca-Cola, especially when I put like vanilla or cherry syrup, which my friend Marlena had gotten from me from her birthday party. She still had some left over from her party. And so she gave them to me. And I have been like truly enjoying it within reason, because I know of the 200 milligram caffeine limit that we have as pregnant women. So yeah. That has kind of been everything as far as the things that I've been enjoying. I finally have gotten back into having iced coffees within reason. Same thing with matchas, within reason as well. But I'm glad that I'm finally able to enjoy that because I missed it so dearly. But yeah, now we're going to get into some more other things besides just food, right? Because that's only like the slim parts of pregnancy, at least mine. Back pain, lower back pain, upper back pain, sometimes at the same time. Yep. Round ligament pain. Knew that was going to be happening. Same thing with lightning crotch, but I didn't know it was going to be like a stabbing pain in that area. Very, very unpleasant. Sometimes for me, it'll last for a couple seconds. Sometimes it'll last for a couple minutes. Sometimes it'll last for over an hour, especially when I'm trying to go to sleep. Very disruptive. But, you know, as my body is starting to change, I didn't start showing as far as bumps are concerned until maybe my 18th to 20th week is when I started to see my body kind of transform. But yeah, there's a lot of moving and stretching and growing that's happening every single week. So I'm not surprised. I kind of knew that this was going to happen, but it doesn't make it less discomforting. But yeah, it's very persistent, especially my back pain if I am sitting in a chair for a long period of time. And also another thing, fatigue. Fatigue. It doesn't matter how long I've been sleeping. Doesn't matter if I've been laying down all day and keeping pressure off of everything as far as my body is concerned. Doesn't matter. I literally will be so sleepy regardless that I can't even keep my eyes open. So exhausted. Some days or even a week or so, I'll feel like the sense of energy And I was so excited for this part of the second trimester because everybody's talking about after like the first trimester and the nausea and everything, you're going to get your energy back. You're going to feel like yourself. And I was so excited for that, especially since the first trimester was still pretty good for me in comparison to some. But I was still looking forward to actually feeling some type of normalcy, right? But that was not the case. Again, it comes and goes. One week I'm fine and I can get up and do my own thing, and another week I could just be dead to the world. I don't even know. But yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at as far as like my body is concerned. But yeah, aches and pains. My feet can be hurting from time to time. It's not like swollen or anything. Aching hands, again, my hands aren't swollen or anything. It's just, you know, it's just like a lot of growth, and that's why I feel very achy and tired, and yeah, just all of that. But just in general, I feel like it's one of those things that I'm just getting through because it's not too unbearable. But the fatigue, however, I hope this goes away eventually at some point, but I highly doubt it anytime soon. But I'm praying for at least a break every now and again, because I've been burnout before several times in my lifetime, and I've never experienced this type of fatigue. The insomnia is also pretty bad. I literally will have the craziest dream every day, having the most feverish of dreams, any type of weird, loopy type dream that you could possibly have. I've had them. And I wake up in the middle of the night after that weird dream, and then I literally will be up from 3 a.m. from when I woke up to when it's time for me to get ready for work. It's insane. It's literally insane. Those dreams are crazy. Nobody ever tells you about with pregnancy about how crazy those dreams can be. It feels very lucid and very weird, and that's all I gotta say on that. But yeah, another thing that has been quite related to me, regardless of what trimester I have been in so far, no matter how many weeks I've gone along in this process, in this journey, another thing that I have started to have consistently is pregnancy anxiety. Now, I am a very anxious girly. I always have been since I was born, to be fair. But yeah, I get that whole anxiety towards every single appointment. That are we going to have a heartbeat, or, you know, is she going to be okay? Like every single time that I get my blood drawn for my first NIPT test and my second trimester NIPT test, I always have this fear that there's going to be something that's wrong. But it's never been the case. Every single ultrasound, every single blood panel that I've gotten has been fine. I feel like I just constantly get myself ramped up, as most is expectant mothers, whether it's your first time or if it's been your multiple time. You tend to feel very anxious and worried about things no matter what. And I think what's the best thing for me, and the best advice that I can give to anybody, whether this is your first time or you just have anxiety about it, or just anxiety about it if you're looking forward to this journey later down in the line, it's easier said than done. But the only advice that I can give you is just to live in the moment. You have to live in the moment and take everything on the basis of just by the day, in the present, which is very hard for me to do personally, because I'm always worried about the future, always thinking about what's going to happen. But you can't do that, especially when things and processes and journeys like pregnancy, it is very unexpected. So you just have to just take yourself on this ride and just know that everything is going to be okay, and that you have to cause yourself to be calm. You have to give yourself assurance, and you also have to just not stress yourself out too much. You just have to just take things in strides. You can't focus on what's happening or what could happen, because that makes this entire experience and this type of journey that we're on, it just makes it less enjoyable. So I've just learned to kind of like take a step back and let myself just be in the moment and just be like, okay, I can feel my baby, everything is fine, like, you know. And as I started to feel her kick and stuff like that, I started feeling it like a little bit towards like my 18 weeks. And then obviously now I'm starting to get like true, like you can see her kicking and moving, and I can feel all of that now to a certain extent. And she's kind of timed now, so I can kind of figure out when she's going to move and stuff like that. It just gives me so much assurance now, because it's not just like waiting for a month, for almost a month, it seems like, for an ultrasound. I just know that, okay, at this time she's kicking, at this time she's doing things. So it gives me some reassurance now that I'm in my second trimester. But yeah, I am so excited for her to be here. I think one of the things that has been very helpful for me is how amazing my husband is. He has been here since the very beginning, so supportive, so helpful, always trying to talk me down when I'm in my spirals of anxiety and crying and worrying about things that end up being fine. He's just been my rock through this entire thing. There's been times where I've not been able to clean around the house and cook, so he's just been the primary person who's just been, you know, getting it together for us as I'm trying to, you know, catch my breath, to be fair. But yeah, I'm so thankful for him, and I'm so thankful to all of my family and friends. I let all my family and friends know around, I think, like 12 weeks, 13 weeks. My parents knew probably around week 9, just because I see my parents so often. And I see my sister so often, like literally every Sunday we see them. So I kind of had to tell them, because I was so sick. I was like, they're going to think that something is wrong with me that has nothing to do with pregnancy, and I don't want to scare anybody about that. We also let my in-laws know around the same time that I let my parents know. Let my friends know, I think a week before I put it on social media. And then by Mother's Day, I was around week 12. And then I kind of just like posted that because I thought it was very convenient for that time. But yeah, I am super excited for the rest of this journey and where it takes us. And I hope that this was like entertaining or helpful. I know that everybody's pregnancy journey, everybody's symptoms are different. So I don't want to use this as a guide to look forward to, because my experience is not going to be every pregnant woman's experience. So take what I say with a grain of salt, that just because my first trimester was like semi-decent doesn't mean that that's going to be that for everyone. And just because my second trimester I have been down for the count due to my tiredness and my fatigue doesn't mean that that's going to be your experience in your first trimester as well. So yeah, I think that this is always so fun. Ever since that I've been pregnant, I've always been watching these videos on, you know, everybody's experience and symptoms and things that they've looked forward to and things that have happened. And I just always like watching these. So I hope this was helpful for people, or just very insightful or informative for someone, some way, shape, or form. And yeah, I am so excited. Hopefully I can upload more. I will try to be a little bit more consistent on this channel, especially in terms of pregnancy content and everything. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.